Tanekomata. My name is Sage Blake. I'm a wanderer, storyteller, artist immature, and I want to die. We're going to be covering 2 games rapid fire today, as well as a 3rd game where I'm in an interesting situation. I'll get to that. But first, Wild. Sonic Wild was created by one person, one Risemack on the Sage website. Every single asset, every single thing about the engine, all created by one person for this contest. And honestly, it's a really good engine. It feels a lot like Sonic Generations Classic, only a little more refined and momentum-based than that one. That's honestly what it needed in the first place. Just a little tweaking here and there. It is a bit jank in places, considering that occasionally hitting enemies and spikes can frame stall the game for a little bit, but other than that, it runs perfectly fine, has very few hiccups, and generally is fun to play through. It's also an interesting note that the game automatically closes when you're finished with it, so yeah, overall, not bad. Next up on the docket is an interesting little game. It's mostly a boss rush more than anything. Carlos and Maria Pearl Madness.
Homie.
This is the first time I've ever gotten that. More often than not, it's a female voice going woomy. But regardless, this game is entirely based off of boss fights. That's it. There are some minor bits of platforming and interaction with stage elements, but for the most part, it's just, here's a boss, fight it. There are 3 different characters you can select, the titular Carlos and Maria, but also a 3rd character, Blueberry, whose playthrough you're going to be seeing right now. All of them control the same way, and generally don't really have too much different with them. I believe Maria doesn't jump as high, but is a little faster and harder to hit. But other than that, it's relatively standard. Arrow keys to move, space to jump, space near a wall to cling to it, and then space again to jump. Control will allow you to hover in the air for a little bit, keep your momentum, keep yourself up in the air. Holding down Z button will allow you to grip bombs, which you'll need for the first fight in order to properly lob them upward at the boss enemy. We'll get to that. And yeah, that's about it in terms of controls. The only real difference between the 3 characters is what you're seeing here for the most part. Maria and Carlos both get little cutscenes at the preface of their quote-unquote story. Blueberry gets nothing. You just go immediately to the gameplay. If you're in a rush at any point, feel free to pick Blueberry just so you can get into the action a little faster. The loading screens are also a little different, but that's a minor thing really. I'm just gonna comment on this right away, considering I'm gonna forget maybe, but I know nothing about these characters, I know nothing about the world that the creators want to create with this. Absolutely nothing. But there are a few grammar inconsistencies. You might be able to detect them on Maria's and Carlos's sides each in little corners here, but on you. Other than that, there is one more item in terms of controls that I didn't mention yet, and that is the fact that you can ground pound. That's done by hitting the down arrow while you're in the air. It's the only way to break these monitors, which grant shields. Mind you, you don't necessarily need the shields, but it's good to have. And trust me, you're gonna need it, because your first time through this, it's gonna be a little bit annoying trying to figure out what to do. Case in point, this first boss fight, which actually had to get a nerf in one of the mid-contest patches, just to make it easier and a little more predictable. Essentially, what you're supposed to be doing is you're supposed to grip a bomb when it's dropped on the 2nd run of Pearl's mech here, and then kick it upward at her using up and releasing Z. Do that about 8 times, and it's a relatively simple fight. But generally, there's not really too many ways to deal with to avoid the wrecking ball. You're either going to have to soak up hits every so often, or otherwise time your jumps incredibly well just to make it over. Because the corners will not shelter you, no matter who you play as, no matter what tactic you do, the corners are dead zones. Other than that, it's a relatively simple fight. Your only real concern, is once you've mastered the patterns of the fight, is the time limit. You only have about a minute 30, and that's not much room for error, considering you need 8 hits. Pretty much you have a gap of maybe 30 seconds, and good luck. Past that, it's another jumpable wall here, and I'm questioning the ring box, that maybe has more of a use in the full game, whenever that gets finished. But for right now, it does nothing, and that's about it. Similarly, the aesthetic on shields doesn't really matter either. They all do the same thing, which is soak up a hit. This second fight is the more interesting of the two, and definitely the most complicated. Pearl decides to go up into the background in a mech and fire at you from afar. She's got a few different attacks up her sleeve, case in point, Killer Whale. Ah, my ears. But you can dodge that one pretty easily by standing right next to the satellite whenever it fires. She could fire off Pentamissiles, I believe they're called. No, wait, they're called... I don't know my Splatoon terms, I'm sorry. She could fire off some ink strike missiles down onto the fields, which each create ink spires and splatter about. She does that. That's a 3-strike. She can also call a rain of bombs, which also splatter into ink whenever they detonate. That usually goes on the 2-round, and other than that, there's only one other attack, and that revolves around an ink umbrella. No, wait, sorry, not ink umbrella. I believe it was called Sprinkler. Nice glitch, by the way. This thing. It's pretty simple to dodge. If you get on top of it, you will never get hit, but if you're right on the left or right sides when it spawns in, either jump with good timing or immediately move to the other sides to avoid them. Generally, the tactic that you'll want to do is listen for sound cues, because that will determine when the laser is going to fire. That'll determine when the bombs are going to fire. That'll determine when these missiles come down. 8 beeps, by the way, on these missiles. And dodge. On the 8th beep, it locks position and giving you more than enough time to go to the left or right sides of the arena, but you can, in fact, dodge these missiles by landing right in the middle, like so. The ink splatter and the ink tower give you just enough room in between them for you to dodge them. As for the Killer Whale here, I didn't know, actually, that you could dodge the entire thing by going up next to the satellite first. So what I was doing was essentially jumping up and down on the right side just to try and bait it into firing above me. Because if you do get hit by that, it is easily going to shave off 2 bars of health, and that's egregious. But that's pretty much it for the product here. Just 2 boss fights and that's it. They're quality boss fights, don't get me wrong, but I kind of want some more content. Especially since we're coming up on our 3rd game here, and... oh boy. Just... On the one hand, I understand that this is the person's first time doing this. GT Fox is a relatively new dev, and that's fine. This is called the Sonic and Amateur Games Expo, after all. You don't necessarily have to be an expert to participate. But from the very get-go to whenever I finished recording this, I encountered nothing but errors. This first trailer here didn't play. Instead, I got a video error. The controls are decent, but I've had moments where the controller doesn't register, and we'll get to that error specifically. Just, in motion, it looks good. Don't get me wrong, in motion it looks really good and is nice to play. But the moment you slow down, like here, you start to see the cracks in the gameplay, and the engine, and just generally everything. And here we encounter our biggest error with the game. The death planes don't work. This means that you have to manually reset the game. I kid you not, you have to manually reset the game in order to play it again. This is undoctored footage. And further, every time you reset, we run into that controller issue. it fails to recognize the controller, which means I need to go into the options menu, reset the controller. That's me doing this right now, by the way. That's why my mouse is on screen. And... look, here! I was holding forward, and I lost all momentum on the rail? The spring here only works when you hold down the jump button, and caps out if you landed on it after a homing attack. Just, the entire game is hard to play at best, and buggy, and generally not fun at worst. I understand that this is the person's first time doing this type of thing, and I commend you. But at the same right, I feel as if GT Fox was wanted to have a product for Sage, but didn't necessarily have the time to commit to that project. Thus, we see a lot of bugginess, a lot of awkward geometry, a random title thing there. And also, further, this trailer that you're seeing right here, I'm editing this in. This also doesn't play, and for both of the characters that are available, it just ends after the first level. The trailer here, not bad, but it's disguising the fact that this game is really not prepared for the environment that it's in currently. Mind you, it's fine to submit this, but at the same right, it's a very incomplete product. Sonic Legacy here... What? Okay, I didn't even know that third character existed. I'm actually viewing this trailer blind. I figured that would make for a more authentic experience, just... Okay. I don't know what this is. For record, in the future, this project, Sonic Legacy, is going to be under a different name called... I believe it was, like, Raging Bonds? But... it still doesn't change the fact that I can't approve of this product, really. I can offer advice, I can offer guidance, but it's not the best product I've played. It's... I'm really struggling trying to put my thoughts into words on this. Just... I feel like it was undercooked, specifically for Sage. If GT Fox submitted it for Sage 2020, with more polish and what have you, I probably wouldn't have an issue, but as it stands, I would struggle to call it the worst title in the Sage 2019 lineup. I have another game in mind for that. But I would struggle to call this playable, too. I get that game development can be tricky. I'm honestly still struggling with One Soul Fragmented as we speak. Well, it's because I've lost so much progress with it. But, I mean, there's even a glitching ring! The homing attack as well, so there's a bit of an issue with priority on it. It's not recorded here, but I've had moments where I've tried to homing attack an enemy and been eternally jammed in between that enemy and the next one in the chain without progressing to either. Also causes a reset, by the way. I've had moments where the boxes at the end of the section with Vanellope, I've homing attacked and gotten stuck on the out-of-bounds area and been unable to complete the stage. And yet I was still able to break boxes in that area, which... The spriting, not bad for Vanellope. Considering that I struggle with spriting myself, it's not bad for a beginner's attempt. It needs a bit more of refinement, but that can come with time. But so much of this game is questionable, so much of it is difficult to play, that I can't, with a straight face, recommend it to too many people unless you're curious about the game in the first place. In that case, you'd probably be curious as to why so much is broken. Just a little advice to GT Fox himself, or herself, themself. Please, playtest. Just playtest the product as much as you can while you're doing it. If you can't bring yourself to playtest it and with a fine-tooth comb look for bugs, at least ask other people around the forums to help you with it. Understand that you want to make a good product, and you'll take the time to do so. That's the first lesson in game development. Heck, more content creators need to learn the motto, "It'll be done when it's done, and I'm satisfied with the product." Me, I've committed a couple of bug reports myself in my text review on the Sage page, but outside that, if you want to consult me, by all means, let me know. But with that, everything all out of the way, I can put these 3 games to rest at least, and quietly return to the void, despite much pain. I need a stiff drink. Tell again. Lucky.